Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first session of tonight's PEO 2023 Council Election to All Candidates meetings. My name is Arthur Sinclair, and I will be the moderator for tonight's discussion. Tonight, we will hear from the candidates for West Region Councillor. The two candidates for this position are Susan McFarlane and Chris Popilolik. The electronic meeting with the candidates via webcast enable voters to learn more about the candidates and PEO issues, so more of them will vote. Voters were able to post questions online in advance of the discussion. We'll try to get to as many of those as possible. In accordance with the approved protocol for the all candidates meeting, as moderator, I may shorten the questions and may not read out preambles to questions, may select any question, may remove offensive and duplicate questions, and may add questions not on the platform. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes for opening remarks. I will then direct a question to a candidate. That candidate will have 1 minute to respond to the question. After the candidate has responded, the remaining candidate will each have 1 minute to address the first candidate's response to that question. Following the question period, the candidates will have 90 seconds each for closing remarks. The order of speakers was determined by a draw earlier this evening. The views and opinions expressed on this broadcast do not necessarily reflect the views of PEO and are the responsibility of the candidates. So without further delay, let's get started with the opening remarks. The first candidate for Western Region Councillor is Susan McFarlane.
Thank you, Arthur. Well, hello, everyone. I'd like to introduce myself to you. I am an environmental engineer, and I've been a PEO license holder for over 30 years. I am the current PEO Western Region Councillor and have been doing that for the past 2 years. My background, I have worked for both municipal and industrial clients, and I currently live in Sarnia, Ontario. I'm happy to be part of this debate and to talk to you about the things that are very important to PEO. So just a little bit more about me. I have my undergraduate degree from the University of Guelph, and I obtained a master's there as well. I also have a PhD in civil engineering from the University of Toronto. It's been a really exciting time to be on PEO Council these last 2 years. There's been a lot of change going on, and I've been happy to be part of that and proud of the changes that have happened. There is still a lot more work to be done, and that's why I'd like to be elected again for another 2 years to complete that work. Thank you very much.
The second candidate for Western Region Councillor is Chris Popilolik.
Arthur. I'm Chris Popilolik. I live in London, work in Dorchester, obtained my Bachelor of Engineering at Western University. I have been licensed since 2009. I actually have volunteered with chapter before my licensure was granted, so I was EIT, and that permitted me to do some volunteering work with the chapter. I served in the chapter in different positions, starting with the secretary, moved on to vice chair, and currently I'm the immediate past chair in the chapter until next AGM next year. For work, I finished computer engineering at work, starting my halfway through university. I work with the same company, started as a co-op student there, moved on to full-time after finishing university, started in design, moved on to production side, and now currently I am a manufacturing manager at the company. Overseeing few people where we manufacture and ship and whatnot. Happy to be part of the debate. Happy to be in the running. And thank you for all the people that supported me so far. Back to you, Arthur.
And that concludes the opening remarks segment. Now let's go to audience questions. So the first question is going to go to Susan. Based on your knowledge of the Professional Engineers Act and the regulations, how would you describe PEO's core mandate?
Well, basically, PEO is there to regulate and advance the practice of engineering to protect the public interest. That is the core mandate, and that is what we do. Thank you.
And the response, same question, core mandate of PEO, to Chris.
Thank you, Arthur. So core mandate from my point of view is somewhat similar to Susan, what Susan said, setting standards and regulating the practice of professional engineering in Ontario, governing the profession. And PEO does that by licensing people that can practice engineering. And also a big part of regulating practice is disciplining, if required, professional engineers or people who incorrectly call themselves professional engineers.
Thank you. So next question relates back to the first one. What do you see as your role as a counselor, that is, as a member of the board of directors, in the fulfillment of PEO's core mandate? And that goes to Chris.
Simply put, I see, together with other councillors and staff of PEO, and where possible with feedback or input from all the members or representative of the members, work on regulating and governing as much as possible. Part of being councillor is serving on some of the task forces, so that's another part of my role as a councillor that I see it.
And the same question to you, Susan?
Yes, I agree with Chris. I mean, we really, the role of council is to provide direction and control for the organization through the CEO registrar. And I think that's a really important component of it. We also, as a councillor, have one vote. So it's very important to work together collaboratively with all the members of council to reach a consensus and provide direction so that the staff can do the work that they need to do. Thank you.
Thank you. And so talking about some bit of issues now, I'll leave you to outline what they are. So what do you see as the most important challenge facing PEO today, and what should council do to address this challenge? And that first goes to Susan.
Well, for me, I see the biggest challenge are the huge operational changes required to meet the needs of FARPACTA. This act that's coming out, which will require international students to be moved through the system in a much faster manner, so that they can obtain their license. I think that's going to be a good thing for all license holders, but it is a huge operational change for PEO, and that is a huge challenge for staff right now, and of course for council, for getting that move forward and meeting the requirements of that act. Thank you.
Thank you. And to Chris, most important challenge, and what should PEO do about it?
Staying relevant, PEO staying relevant for the next 100 years and onward, as they did stay relevant for the last 100 years. Staying relevant to the public, the government, but most importantly to the engineers themselves, the new graduates, the existing PEO license holders. For new graduates, there is all those emerging disciplines, software engineering, biomedical engineering. PEO is seems to be focused on civil, mechanical, electrical. That worked well for the last 100 years, but we need to move forward. We need to stay relevant.
Thank you. So next question is about the PO's strategic plan. And first, it will first go to Chris. The strategic goal in PO's 2023-2025 strategic plan is to ensure all stakeholders see relevance and value in PEO. And reflecting on this goal, whom would you identify as some of PEO's key stakeholder groups or organizations, and what do you think meaningful and appropriate engagement with specific stakeholders groups might look like?
The two major groups, and ties into my previous answer, the two major groups of the stakeholders would be the current PO license holders and new graduates. We need to make sure that we don't want to alienate current PO holders. We don't want them to lose, maybe not so much lose as to rather lose interest in holding PO license. For the new graduates, and again, especially in those emerging disciplines, we need to let them know why having a PEng behind their name is important. Those will be my two main stakeholders from my point of view.
Thank you. And to Susan, about stakeholders?
Yes, I definitely agree with Chris on those stakeholders. I would also add some of our stakeholders would be government, employers, citizens of Ontario. I mean, we're responsible for ensuring, the safety and the practice, of engineering. So we have all those people that we have to look for, to engage, and find innovative ways to do so, to get feedback, what they like about what PEO is doing, what they don't like about PEO is doing. And I think we are working on that, and trying to really get the feedback, from people. There has been talk too about getting feedback from those engineering graduates who decide not to get their license and why that is. So I think those are very key stakeholders as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, it was mentioned an acronym earlier tonight, so I wanted to skip ahead to one of the questions with respect to FARPACTA, and I want to acknowledge that there was more than one question online about that related to this. So I'm going to go with the prepared question, but acknowledging that there was more than one question online about this one. This will go first to Susan, then Chris. From a public protection standpoint, what, if any, value do you see in PEO's efforts to streamline the licensure of engineering graduates, Canadian or internationally trained? What, if any, opportunities are created by recent government changes or amendments to and this is the acronym, Fair Access to Regulated Professions and Compulsory Trades Act, or FARPACTA?
Thank you, Arthur. I was going to try and say that, but I thought I'd get it wrong anyway, so I did. I think there's going to be a lot of advantages to this, the change in the operational process, not only to the international students who are going to have more opportunities in terms of getting jobs, getting their license faster, but all of the new computer interfaces that are going to have to be added to move the application process through the system faster to meet these deadlines is going to be advantageous to all license holders. It's also going to allow people getting their license to track their application through the system in a more efficient way, and they can see where they are. So it's really putting a lot of onus on PEO to get those computer systems and structures in place. So I think it's going to be good for everyone, all the stakeholders. Thank you.
And to Chris, and just for everybody watching, that's the Fair Access to Regulated Professions and Compulsory Trades Act, or FARPACTA.
So streamlining the process of application makes perfect sense. I'm sure we all know or know of somebody whose application has been in the process for way longer than it should be. So from that point of view, it makes perfect sense. As Susan points out, it will allow especially internationally trained professional engineers to be professional engineers to gain access to jobs that otherwise they wouldn't be able to get. And again, PO should go beyond meeting just the minimum requirements of fair access to regulated professions. Thank you.
So the next question to Chris, talking a little bit back to talking about the PEO generally, is there anything PEO can or should do to enhance its public interest protection mandate?
I think part of it might be related to disciplining engineers if required, investigating it fully, not stopping it if there is possible changes. As I've learned recently, the discipline committee was asked to put pretty much all their work on hold for the time being, which in a way is unacceptable, and from the public protection point of view, shouldn't be happening. That's it.
Thank you. And to Susan.
Well, I would say that there's always room for improvement. We should always strive for continuous improvement. One thing I do think that we should maybe try and do is remove barriers to those people that don't apply for those engineering graduates that don't apply for the professional engineering license, because I think the more people that we can capture and get their license, the more people become aware of what PEO is for, what we do, and we, in that sense, we can do our mandate of public protection, or we can improve our mandate for public protection. Thank you.
Oh, we're whipping through these. So, all right. So, just because I want to get this one off, because I'm just going to summarize. There's a bunch of questions online, and I'm just going to be very, with lots of preambles, but I'm just going to generalize in the best of my abilities. And just ask the question first to, first to Susan. What is your, I'll just generally speaking, what is your position on mandatory continuing professional development?
Well, I am very proud of the mandatory continuing professional development program that was put together by staff at PEO. As someone like myself who is not practicing right now, but could be practicing in the future, I like the way they have set up the training requirements. There are a lot of no cost, low cost training alternatives. So if you don't have an employer to fund your training, there are still ways that you can get your training. So I am happy with the program. I have to say 2 years ago when I ran in this election, I was a little more skeptical of the program, but I think for a variety of reasons, including pressure from government, other regulatory bodies, I do think that it had to happen for PEO. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chris, your response with respect to mandatory continuing professional development.
So mandatory professional development makes sense. It's not only engineers that have to do it. The one problem I have with this being mandatory, a couple of years it was voluntary. PEO promised a referendum to all the members on whether or not to make it mandatory. And through Arthur, may I ask Susan why she, along with I think 14 other councillors, voted to not to have a referendum on this. That's my question. But going back to CPD, it makes sense. I like, as Susan pointed out, that it's not required for engineers that are not practicing, because that would be that wouldn't make sense. And again, my main problem with it is how we got to it being mandatory.
Thank you. All right. So the next question going to Chris. There has been an awful lot of conversation about governance within the PEO. So I wanted to address that a little bit. How do you see your role as a councillor in relation to past or future governance reform?
I guess I will not talk about past governance reforms because those are done. There is nothing to be done about them unless we move into the future to change them. For the future, I guess my role as a councillor, the way I see it, is ensuring that council seeks where possible, where required, input from members. Again, mandatory professional development comes to mind. Another one that myself or any other councillor should engage in is trying to engage on our members, get their decisions, get them heard, and maybe even get them to vote on larger scale than has been happening in the past.
Thank you. And to Susan regarding governance.
Well, I think that our role as council is to always keep moving forward and not looking back on past decisions made by previous councillors. Having said that, if there is a bad decision and there's evidence supporting that it is a bad decision, then I think we have to look to that. I just wanted to comment on Chris's comment about the member not asking the members a referendum about CPD. And as a councillor for PEO, we cannot delegate our decision-making abilities to the license holders. It is our responsibility to make that decision, and we need to stand by that decision. So that's why I voted against the referendum, because it's not really valid in the governance structure of PEO. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's talk a little bit more about PEO strengths, weaknesses, and such. A question to you, Susan. What weaknesses, if any, should PEO seek to improve in its role as a regulator or in its governance model?
Well, I think just a couple of issues that I've seen with my 2 years on council is the low engagement from the license holders at large in terms of voting and elections and things like that. So I do think that it would be good if we could get the membership at large more involved in PEO and getting them out to vote. The other weakness, and I'm not sure it's a weakness, but I think that the other thing that we can work on, and I've said this already, is just finding out why engineering graduates who are eligible to get their professional engineering license aren't doing so. And I think we can learn a lot from that. And maybe if there are any barriers there, we can remove those barriers and, get more people involved in the profession. Thank you.
And to you, Chris.
That might be a first for the debate, but I think I will agree with Susan on on both points. The members' disengagement, right? I mean, like in the last election, only 12% of the eligible voters voted. So that's horrendous. It went down from 16% to 12%. So hopefully this year is going to go at least to 13% or back to 16 or maybe higher. So definitely members' disengagement is the biggest weakness I see with the PEO. And to Susan's point about new graduates, I think we need to start reaching out to the potential professional engineers while they are still in school, to tell them the value of the license.
Thank you. And we've been going through these so fast that I feel like I'm running out of them. So let's talk about a subject that you should be very well acquainted with, which is yourself. So next question to Chris, what special skills, experience, or ideas do you bring to enhance the governance of PEO? And if you have any, what boards have you served on that might be similar to PEO Council?
Thank you, Arthur. I served on board for smaller organizations. I have served for a number of years as one of the board of directors for the condo corporation where I live. I've been in Toastmasters for about a decade. I served in different positions at my Toastmasters club, including president, treasurer, and also at a district level. So overseeing a number of clubs. In my professional work, and I think those would be also related to being a counselor, I work quite often, like I said, manufacturing manager, but part of my job is continuing improvement, making sure that just because we're doing something the way we did it last year, doesn't mean it's the way to do it, because it might not be the best way to do it. So
thank you. And over to you, Susan. Special skills, experience, ideas.
Yes, thank you, Arthur. One unique set of experiences that I have is reporting to a municipal governance board. I was general manager of the local water treatment plant here in Sarnia, and I reported to a governance board consisting of municipal politicians for the people that we supplied water to. So I have that unique experience from the staff perspective of working for a governance board. So I understand that from the municipal side, which is slightly different from PEO, but there are some similarities. I also served on the board of directors for the Ontario Municipal Water Association from 2016 to 2018. So I've had some experience being on a provincial board doing that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're probably ballparking, depending on how long these take. We'll have 2 or 3 more. Let's talk about PEO when we're the organization again. And this question goes to Susan. So what do you see as the most important threat, or sorry, what do you see as the biggest threat to self-regulation as it pertains to PEO and the engineering profession?
Well, I think, the changing world we live in is always a big threat to all organizations and how people do business, how businesses do business. But I do think that the interdisciplinary nature of how work gets done, you have technical projects with engineers, non-engineers. Can we protect the safety of the public in those situations? As Chris mentioned earlier, there are many people who are deciding not to get their professional engineering license, or they may be doing engineering work and they're not engineers. So I think that's the biggest risk. And of course, there's always the risk of losing self-regulation piece. It's happened in other places in Canada. And I think that's something that is really important that we have and we work to keep. Thank you.
Thank you. To Chris, so biggest threat to self-regulation?
Biggest threat to self-regulation, I guess. I agree with Susan on most of her points. I think part of it is maybe the council itself. It's some of them are appointed and some of them are chosen, as Susan or I will be this year. So the question then for me is, why there are so many government appointees, councillors, compared to other professions where there is considerably fewer, and why there is no limits on how long those can be on council versus the elected people that are now have limit of how long they can serve. Yeah, that's for me.
Thank you. And my next question, I would talking about some of the relationships the PEO has. What would you describe as the ideal relationship between the PEO and Ontario Society of Professional Engineers and any other stakeholder groups that are focused on advocacy? To Chris.
Thank you, Arthur. Professional Engineers of Ontario and Ontario Society of Professional Engineers are essentially composed of the same people. You have to be a member of PEO to be a member of OSPI. So they are all engineers. For some reason, they don't want to work together on anything. If anything, they want to make lawyers a little bit more rich. So I would love to see those two organizations work together from now and forever. It's my dream, right? It's like a Disney movie where PO and OSP live together ever after. And it's the same with Engineers of Canada. Both organizations should work together. Thank you.
Thank you. To Susan, relationship between PEO and Ontario Society of Professional Engineers and similar advocacy groups?
Well, I think it is important that these organizations do work together, and I agree with Chris that I don't want to see lawyers get any richer either. I think there are, with CPD coming up, there are going to be lots of opportunities for example, OSPI and to support PEO and the CPD requirements. So I think that should be exciting for OSPI. But of course, I do think maybe there needs to be more a relationship as well on the political side of things where the councillors can interact and meet and exchange ideas. So I think it's important that we try to work together. We try to streamline things, don't reinvent the wheel if we don't have to, share information. And of course, Engineers Canada, there are PEO councillors on Engineers Canada so that they bring back information to us. So I think there is some good stuff happening there. Thank you.
Thank you. And so this will be the last of the section period, this question section before we're going to do the closing remarks. So it's the last one would be, what is one thing you want voters to know about you? And that goes to Susan first.
Well, I guess I would just like voters to know that I do get actively involved in councils that I'm part of, and I don't have a problem speaking my mind. During this past 2-year term on PEO, I think I've been very active to try and especially on the governance side. I was on the governance and nominating committee. So I've been very active to try and make change or help make change where change is needed and move things forward in a positive direction. Thank you.
Thank you. And to Chris, one thing you want people, voters to know about you.
Thank you, Arthur. Susan, I like your spiel. Working together with other councillors, with members at large, to make PEO relevant for now and for the next 100 or 200 or however many years. And making sure that the PEO is the best regulator, the best it can be. Thank you.
And this concludes the question portion of the meeting. And now each candidate will have 90 seconds for closing remarks. Susan McFarlane, your closing remarks.
Thank you, Arthur. Well, I'd like to thank Chris for this very good debate. And thank PEO for the opportunity to discuss some of the issues that the organization is dealing with. I have had a very interesting time on PEO Council for the past 2 years. There is a bit of a learning curve to get up to speed and learn how things work. So I think that if the license holders would vote me in for another 2 years, I really think that I could work cooperatively and efficiently with the other council members to provide direction and control to the organization. Thank you.
Chris Popiolik, your closing remarks.
Thank you, Arthur, for moderating. Thank you, Susan, for the great debate. Thank you for everybody who supported me so far in this adventure. And I guess whether for Susan or for me, I encourage every single professional engineer that can to vote in this election. And as a councillor, if I were to be chosen, I would work the best I can to make PEO the best it can be, removing barriers to getting the license, ensuring greater engagement by engineering profession, by the members in better engagement in PEO, improving the perceived value of PEO license for new graduates, students, people who are engineering in engineering profession from other countries, just making sure that PEO stays relevant. Thank you.
And this concludes tonight's discussion. I would like to thank the candidates for their participation and also those watching online for their interest in the governance of the engineering profession. I hope you found the meeting to be informative and worthwhile. As a reminder, a recording of all meetings will be on PEO's website for the duration of the election. Thank you again, and to everyone for participating in our discussion. And remember, your profession matters, so does your vote. Voting is quick and easy. You can vote on the internet or by phone. Voting opens on January 13th and voting closes at 4 p.m. on February 17th. All information you need is on our website at peo.on.ca. Good night.